Welcome to the Starting Over podcast training series. I am your host, Edward Shelton, and in this episode, we are going to be looking at combat reflexes. Combat reflexes is one of those powers that are really great in melee situations, but other times it seems like it's one of those very disadvantaged powers for the overall game. Definitely since there's still a lot of HeroClix elements that require or rely around high range. So what is the best thing that combat reflexes brings to the table? What is that one quintessential element that makes it a good power? Well, let's get into it. Let's look at the actual description of the power. Combat reflexes. Modify this character's defense value by +2 against close combat attacks. When this character takes damage from an attack, it may choose to be knocked back. This character ignores knockback damage. Now, how many of you actually heard that? Now, and I'm saying this literally, like, how many times have you used combat reflexes and were in a situation that you just didn't like and decided, hey, I'm going to take knockback damage and now my opponent can't shoot me? Raise your hands. Go on. Most likely not. Because the only thing that we think of with combat reflexes is, hey, I get to ignore knockback damage. And so that does have its advantages, but also being able to be savvy enough to say, I can, when I take this damage, I can be knocked back, because this guy has flurry. I can be knocked back, and in me being knocked back, I can just go ahead and not take that second hit. Think about it. Really just let that sit in. You do not have to take a second hit, whether it's from range or melee or whatever. If your opponent is trying to get you a second time or a third time with an attack, you could just decide, okay, I took the damage, now I'm on combat reflexes, I'm out of here, man. And I'll just take knockback for how much damage I took. And that knockback can knock you into hindering terrain if you have stealth, or knock you out of hindering terrain. You just need to get out of it. You can have multiple options for the knockback and for using combat reflexes. Now, the main reason I focus on this part first is because, in all honesty, most people will be like, oh gosh, this is really easy to understand, +2 to melee attacks, blah. No, we have to come back and gather ourselves, because again, what are we trying to do? We are trying to gather nuance. Okay, and in nuance, we can get various elements and we can surprise our opponent, and we can, just make them think twice before doing things, because we know the rules and they are relying on their memory. Okay, so the next thing that we probably want to really combine combat reflexes with is charge. Charge gets us into melee combat. You know what else gets us into melee combat? Hypersonic speed. I know we're so used to saying hypersonic speed, run away, but if we have hypersonic speed and combat reflexes, we might want to stick around. Now, also note that with our combat reflexes, we're able to stand toe-to-toe with bigger threats and bigger attacking figures than we could before. So if, let's say, our defense is a 17 combat reflexes, it's a 19, for that melee bruiser to hit, and if they had an 11 attack, against the 17 is fine, but against the 19, problems start to occur. So we have to start considering that. The next element that we really need to look closely at with combat reflexes is ignoring knockback damage and zooming in on that. When we ignore the knockback damage, this means if our opponent knocks us there with an attack, or we get targeted by force blast, or if we are, knocked off a roof, we won't take knockback damage because we have combat reflexes. And these are very, very important things because it allows us to say, okay, you hit me, I flip off a roof. Okay, that's fine. Now you can't follow up attack me real easily because I am nowhere, within your line of fire. Or you can't hit me with a melee attack now because I'm on a different elevation. But I have leap climb, so I can hit you. There are various things that we can just combine with combat reflexes to be beneficial for us. And the big things that we want to look at in picking a combat reflexes piece: can this character get into melee range? Okay. The next thing that we need to look at is, can this character benefit from bouncing around? The next thing that we need to look at is, what type of terrain and maps am I going to be picking for my team? The last thing that we're going to look at is, what really does support my figure really well? Some powers that really do help out combat reflexes, really just defense in general, is, defend, replacing combat values. Also, another power that really helps combat reflexes is telekinesis, because you can TK a figure that is not adjacent to the opposing figure into being adjacent, and then allow that figure to do an attack as well. Another power that has really good synergy with combat reflexes is for those rare figures that also have energy shield deflection. So either way, your opponent at range or in close combat will have to deal with that stat modification. The last thing that I feel that really benefits a really good combat reflex character is, and this is going to sound silly, is close combat expert. Now, you might say that this adds absolutely nothing defensively to that figure surviving, but what close combat expert does is something very unique. You're right next to your opponent. You have your base stat damage, which they're sort of concerned about. Then you see that they have close combat expert. Now that character is a threat. It's a unique threat because they know, hey, if you push that close combat monster to attack after you got moved up, then they're going to take a lot more damage. So close combat expert allows you to use combat reflexes in a very interesting way, because you're able to survive in that toe-to-toe situation. It gives you that added defense, and then also, if your opponent fails to connect, you can hit them with a very strong attack. It will make your opponent focus on that close combat expert and those combat reflexes together, as meaning this guy is now really seriously threatening me. Okay, so our exercise this time is just find some figures that are front-loaded with combat reflexes, and what I want you to do is just practice taking knockback from every attack. Yeah, just take knockback from every attack. By taking knockback from every attack, what that's going to teach you is, A, I can do that. I can take knockback from every attack, but I will not take knockback damage. The next thing that it's going to show you is that you can go in to various situations, and if it gets too threatening, you can, just get knocked back. So I want you to practice just having your figures just being knocked back. And how you're going to do this is you're just going to set up a normal game and I want you just to write down on a little card to the side of you, so-and-so can be knocked back. And then just play the game. And then see how many times that you remember. And I want you to play as many games as you can until you don't need that card. And you think of being knocked back automatically. Alright, so that's it for this episode, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time.